BookTube. For this Tag Tuesday, I'm going to be doing the P tag, the 16th tag in the continuing alphabet tag series created by Jim of Jim's Books, Reading, and Stuff. If I'm a bit frazzled looking, it's because I'm kind of had to scrap an earlier iteration of this video. I didn't quite like it. So I'm going to start over and see how this one goes. So let's start with P is for porridge. What did you have for breakfast? So I had my usual Tuesday breakfast of link sausage with eggs and toast. Well, an egg and toast. I don't have 2 eggs, I have 1. It's pretty much what I have every Tuesday and also Saturday. Yeah, my breakfast is pretty much on a set schedule of what I have. Excuse me. P is for painter. What is your favorite painter? So I'm going to list a number of more contemporary and current painters who primarily work in pastel. 3 of them have YouTube channels, and if I remember, I will leave links to them in the show notes down below. And if not, then I'm sorry. So I'm going to go with Marla Baguetta, who primarily does landscapes, and I love her landscapes. I love her techniques. It's just, she's a really amazing painter. Also, another really amazing landscape and definitely a floral painter is Karen Margulis. I watched one of her painting videos last night and it was amazing. I loved watching her paint as well. And then also Alain Picard, who does landscapes as well as portraits, and I love his portraits. And he is also on YouTube. Not as frequently as Marla Baguetta, who's pretty much done a weekly live stream since the pandemic started, and Karen Margulis, who does a painting, I think she's like once a month or so, although she's started to upload a bit more frequently. And Picard, I think it's every few months, although it has been quite a while since I think his last live stream or video, which I need to actually go check and see. But anyway, I love his work as well. And a pastelist who isn't on YouTube, but whose work I absolutely adore, is Liz Haywood Sullivan, whose landscapes are amazing. And I watched a video of hers from the Artist Network. That was a absolutely wonderful experience. I do have one of her books, so I will show that when I do the short and sweet tag that Steve Donahue weaponized from Rita Bowler, which I'm aiming to do tomorrow because I'm wanting to do a weaponized tag of my own tomorrow as well. So tomorrow might be a double tag Wednesday, or I could save it up for a double tag Thursday, which would be appropriate because on Big Brother it's going to be double eviction. So looking forward to that. Anyway, so I'll leave links to Marla Baguetta, Karen Margulis, and Alain Picard in the show notes. And I guess I could also leave a link to Liz Haywood Sullivan's website too. So P is for Police Procedural. What is the last Police Procedural you read? It has been a long time. I'm going to say The City in the City by China Mieville, which, yes, it's speculative fiction, but it does have a bit of police procedural to it, even if it is not terribly well done. It is the story of 2 city-states that are mashed together and whose citizens refuse to see the citizens in the buildings of the other city. And it involves the murder of a tourist whose murder seems to have kind of wrecked the sort of delicate balance between the two cities. And it's up to a police detective from one city and I think from the other to work together to figure out what happened. I have never gotten on with City in the City. If you want to talk about a more like purely police procedural, I would say the last one would have been I think Hornet's Nest by Patricia Cornwell, which is the beginning novel of her lesser-known series. Patricia Cornwell is most known for her Case Scarpetta novels, but she also wrote a secondary series. I'm blanking on the character's name. It's about a police detective or captain and a journalist who sort of rode along with her initially, but who I think eventually becomes a police officer himself or something. And I don't really recall much about the story because it's been like well over 20 years since I read it, during my detective fiction period. And I really haven't gone back to detective fiction all that much since that period, except for Agatha Christie. Excuse me. Just had lunch. P is for playlist. Do you have a favorite, or have you created a YouTube playlist? Yes, I have several. One of which is a very long, there's hundreds of videos in it, of art videos on YouTube. Which also, if you are interested in current artists, that would be a great resource, I would think. Primarily pastels, because that is the form of art that I'm most fond of. But there's also acrylic painting, I think a few oil painting demos, some drawing demos, sculpture demos, maybe even some comic book illustration and manga illustration I think is in there too. It's been a while since I've looked, so I really need to go back and check. Although I did check that particular playlist like about a few weeks ago, because there's a few videos I remember seeing and quite liking that I wanted to sort of subscribe to the artist's channel. So anyway, but yeah, definitely the artist's playlist. Also have a booktube book tag list that I've been meaning to get back to. It's basically some of my tag necromancy ideas. I kind of see a tag I want to do and leave it there. So I do have a few creative playlists, although nothing of my own videos, which is probably something I should do at some point, but I haven't gotten around to it yet. P is for publisher. Do you have a favorite publisher? Not really. There are publishers I'm fond of, but none that are really my favorite. Not in the way of, say, Steve Donahue and Penguin or Norton. I'm fond of a lot of publishers, but it's not that kind of, I'm going to pick up everything by this publisher, or this publisher's never done anything wrong, or anything like that. No. And also, since I'm in a bit of a transition period, it's sort of like publishers I have liked in the past are probably not quite as high up in my estimation as they were, and others that I've never even heard of or encountered until recently are rising up. So it's, yeah, a bit chaotic. P is for pilgrimage. Have you made a pilgrimage, literary or religious? No. P is for play. What is your favorite play? Um, I have quite a few favorite plays. Um, I would say my favorite is, or I'll go with top three. So, The Women by Claire Booth Luce, which is a play out of the 1930s about Mary Haynes, who is a New York socialite who discovers her husband has been having an affair and who ends up divorcing him and regrets it and eventually gets him back. Um, I I mean, I've read the play a few times, although I mean I've seen the movie dozens of times. There was a movie made in the 1939, starring I'm blanking on the main character's actress, but also it included Joan Crawford, and I've loved the movie for ages. I try to watch it every time it comes up on TCM, which is not infrequently. And I have actually been looking to buy the play for ages. And I've never quite gotten around to either finding it or pulling the trigger. So it might be something I really want to look into. I'm also quite fond of Our Town by Thornton Wilder. I've read it a few times. It is basically a slice of life play that takes place over the course of, I think, a few decades. It's been a while since I've read it. I don't have much in the way of any drama in my collection. But I remember loving it every time I've read it. And I also quite enjoy Sweet Bird of Youth and A Cat on a Hot Tin Roof by Tennessee Williams. I would say Tennessee Williams is my favorite playwright. So, Sweet Bird of Youth is about a gigolo accompanying who basically drags a fading Hollywood star to his hometown in the hopes that she can aid him and his high school sweetheart in getting Hollywood roles and pretty much facing up to the consequences of his actions when he left town. And then Cat on a Hot Tin Roof is a family drama about a depressed former football player who comes to terms with the death of his best friend, as well as his fraught relationship with his wife and his parents, namely his father. So yeah, I really enjoy all four of them, and I have quite a few others. I don't have any of them in my collection at the moment. I really only have Shakespeare and an anthology of gay and lesbian plays. So definitely, I think when I get around to it, I do need to add more drama to my collection. And I might talk a bit more about that on Friday with weekly reads, or if we want to do it like a dedicated library planning video or collection planning video or something like that. P.S. for Paris. What is the last book you read set in Paris? I want to say it was Lie With Me by Philippe Besson. Lie With Me is a work of autofiction. It is basically Philippe Besson coming to terms with the death of his first lover, who he met when he was in a small village in, I want to say, South Central France, who ended up leaving him when he went to Spain to work at some of his relatives' farm. And Philippe went to become a writer. Decades later, the lover's son has tracked down Philippe Esson and in I think Paris. I think Philippe does live in Paris, so I think there are some parts of the novel set in Paris. Um, and so the son kind of connects with Philippe, and gradually during this time, Philippe learns what happens to his lover and what exactly led up to his lover's eventual suicide. Um, so yeah, so I'm pretty sure there are parts of Lie With Me that are set in Paris. If it's not, then the last book set in Paris I read is The House of Binding Thorns by Eliot de Bedard, which is a um, fantasy novel set in an alternate Paris dominated by factions of fallen angels. And The House of Binding Thorns is about a rebellion in the House Hawthorne, which is led by the fallen angel Asmodeus, who is looking to cement a political alliance with the dragons living in the River Seine. And it's about a civil war brewing in House Hawthorne, which I really enjoyed the novel. It's been forever since I've read it, and I really should probably give it and the other two books in the series, The Dominion of the Fallen, another reread. So I think those are the two that would be set in Paris. P is for paperback. Do you prefer paperback or hardback? I mean, I like both. I wouldn't be upset if I added either to my collection, but I think I do prefer trade paperbacks more than I do hardcovers because they are more compact. You can get more on a shelf. They are usually cheaper, although depending on the publisher and not by much, because some paperbacks can cost as much as hardcovers, but those are usually university presses whose pricings are insanely expensive, and you can only really pick up their books either used or when they're having a super sale. P is for many countries: Pakistan, Peru, Poland, Portugal, Philippines, Papua New Guinea, Palau, Paraguay. Have you read a book set in a country beginning with P or written by an author from a country beginning with P? Yes. Recently, just this year, I read Swimming in the Dark by Tomasz Jadrowski, which is set in Poland and is about a gay love story in the early 80s about one young man who, the main character, who becomes a writer and eventually a dissident who leaves Poland, and his lover who becomes a increasingly prominent member of the Polish Communist Party. Also, Wisława Szymborska is one of my favorite poets, and she is Polish. Finally, P is for pandemic. Have you read any books about pandemics? No. So we also have some extra alternative prompts, which I will get to in a moment, but first, P is also for pestilence, and pestilence is the second of the 4 children of the apocalypse, my 2 nieces and 2 nephews. Pestilence is quite fond of animals. In fact, I think she is quite fond of puppies. And I think at her father's house, I think she does have a dog. But she's also quite fond of cats, too. And she's also quite known for telling it how she sees it, which is not always a comfortable commentary on our part. But anyway, let's move on to the extra alternative prompts. P is for poetry. Do you have a favorite poem you can recite? No. P is for politics. Do you enjoy political books? Sometimes. Sometimes they can be a bit on the pedantic side, on the preaching to the choir side, and sometimes they can be quite good. I have enjoyed the two Trump books by Rick Wilson, Everything Trump Touches Dies, and Running Against the Devil. But political books and political history are a subject that I do need to invest some more time in. P is for philosophy. What is your reading philosophy? Why do you read the books you do? Mood mostly. Right now, since I've been on BookTube, my reading has been increasingly weird, increasingly transitory. I feel like my tastes are changing. That I'm moving from being far more a fan of science fiction and fantasy to really being far more engaged with and interested in history. And so I'm in this weird space where there is this transition going on, but also I'm resisting it in a lot of ways. But it's also, I think, in part a recognition on my part that I really can't read like a single genre. That I need a greater variety of books to read and enjoy. Because if I end up reading too many books from a single genre for too long a length of time, I'm going to start bailing or really not enjoying the books that I read towards the end of that period, because I've pretty much read a huge amount so far. So my reading philosophy, if I have one, is I think based on moods and me being a bit insane as a reader, I think. P is for Puffin. Do you have a favorite children's publisher? No. P is for Pages. How many pages do you read a week on average? So I'm going to say about between 800 to 1,000. It depends if my reading on Saturday and Sunday are really good. I can get about 200 pages read on a weekend, although sometimes I can go much further, and then sometimes it's not quite as much. And then on the work weeks, I can get about maybe 100 pages, so all told it comes out to being about 900 pages. But it can go up and it can go down depending on the book. P is for Patton. Who, in your opinion, is the most successful military leader? I'm going to go with Alexander the Great, who was never defeated in battle, and whose victories were often when he was grossly outnumbered. So yeah, I think definitely Alexander the Great is the most successful military leader. So that was the P tag. If you would like to do this tag, consider yourselves tagged, and I will be back tomorrow with the short and sweet tag and maybe a few others, because there are quite a few tags coming out this week that sound very interesting, and one tag that if Steve Donahue doesn't weaponize it, I will. So anyway, BookTube, until tomorrow, thank you, have a great afternoon, and stay safe.